Welcome to Southwest Desert, where adventure meets the arid beauty of the American Southwest. Join us as we explore the rugged landscapes, uncover hidden historical gems, and dive deep into the rich legends and culture of this iconic region. Subscribe now and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out on the latest desert adventures. Please leave a like or comment. This is very helpful. Let's journey together into the heart of the Southwest Desert. Imagine this. You discover one of the richest gold deposits in Arizona territory. Your find generates millions of dollars, builds entire communities, and transforms desert wilderness into a thriving industrial center. Companies fight over your discovery. Hundreds depend on it for their livelihoods, and your name becomes legendary across the American West. Now imagine dying broke, alone, and so desperate that you end your own life with a revolver. This is the true story of Heinrich Heinzel, better known as Henry Wickenburg, and his discovery of the Vulture mine. It's a tale with everything: accidental fortune, corporate betrayal, stagecoach robberies, shootouts, and one of the most tragic ironies in American mining history. Because sometimes in the Wild West, finding gold was easy. Keeping it was another story entirely. Our story begins in 1863, 13 miles southwest of what would become Wickenburg, Arizona. But to understand what happened, we need to go back to Austria in 1820, where Heinrich Heinzel was born with no idea he would trigger one of Arizona's greatest gold rushes. Like thousands of others, Heinrich, who Americanized his name to Henry Wickenburg, caught gold fever. The California Gold Rush had sent shockwaves worldwide, and young men from every corner abandoned their old lives to chase golden dreams in the American West. Wickenburg crossed an ocean and headed for the Colorado River region, where gold strike rumors were as common as tumbleweeds. But Wickenburg wasn't just another starry-eyed prospector. He was methodical, experienced, and smart enough to team up with serious operators. He joined the legendary Weaver Party, professional prospectors who had discovered Rich Hill, another significant Arizona gold find. Under their guidance, Wickenburg learned desert prospecting's harsh realities, the subtle signs indicating gold-bearing geology, and when to trust his instincts. Those instincts would change everything. In 1863, Wickenburg left the successful Weaver Party to strike out alone, targeting the Hikaria Mountains, where geological signs suggested untapped gold deposits. It was bold, leaving a proven group to venture solo into some of North America's most inhospitable terrain. But fate had other plans. Wickenburg never reached the Hikaria Mountains. Something caught his eye that stopped him cold: a massive quartz projection jutting from the desert floor like nature's golden beacon. Any experienced prospector knew quartz formations often contained gold, but this wasn't just any formation. This was extraordinary, a geological anomaly almost too good to be true. Wickenburg's tests confirmed what his eyes told him. This quartz was extraordinarily rich in gold. Not traces or hints, but substantial, commercially viable concentrations of the precious metal men killed for. Here's where Wickenburg proved he was as smart as lucky. Instead of frantically mining everything he could carry, he developed a revolutionary business model. Wickenburg began selling ore directly from the mine at $15 per ton, with one crucial catch: buyers had to do all the mining, transportation, and processing themselves. The brilliance was obvious. Wickenburg eliminated almost all operational risks while guaranteeing steady income. Buyers paid him for the right to work, and they were happy because the gold content was so rich that even after paying Wickenburg and covering costs, they made fortunes. Word spread quickly, reaching Benjamin Phelps, a wealthy Philadelphia businessman, in 1866. Phelps saw potential for industrial-scale gold extraction using cutting-edge technology and serious capital. Phelps bought 4/5 of the Vulture mine, incorporated the Vulture Company, and began Arizona Territory's most ambitious gold processing operation. His first move, constructing a sophisticated 20-stamp mill on the Hassayampa River. A stamp mill was essentially a massive mechanical hammer crushing gold-bearing quartz into fine particles for gold separation. 20 stamps operating simultaneously created thunderous, rhythmic pounding heard for miles, the sound of industrial fortune-making. Success bred community. By 1870, genuine Vulture City had sprouted around the mill site, housing 46 dwellings and nearly 200 residents whose existence revolved around extracting gold from desert. These weren't just miners. They were mill workers, merchants, blacksmiths, cooks, and specialists supporting major industrial operations. But the massive stamp mill required enormous fuel amounts, and the desert provided only cottonwood trees and mesquite bushes. The operation's appetite was voracious. Within years, they had consumed every piece of wood within reasonable hauling distance. The solution: move the entire mill downstream to Seymour where new fuel sources existed. Where the mill went, people followed. Vulture City relocated itself, demonstrating how completely the community depended on gold processing. In 1879, the Central Arizona Mining Company entered with audacious plans. They constructed 12 miles of 6-inch pipeline through desert terrain using 1870s technology, supporting a mill 4 times larger than anything previously attempted. Results were transformational. By eliminating expensive ore transportation and dramatically increasing processing capacity, they made lower-grade ore profitable. Rock miners had tossed aside for years became economically viable, multiplying the deposit's value. The town relocated again, following the new 80-stamp mill to the mine site. By mid-1880s, Vulture City housed 300 residents. The thunderous roar of 80 stamps created sound travelers heard from 10 miles away. The most fascinating discovery came when engineers tore down original buildings for expansion. These structures, hastily built during early boom years, used whatever materials were available, including chunks of gold-bearing ore deemed too low grade for earlier processing. When those buildings were demolished and run through the new mill, they yielded thousands in gold, literally built into the town's infrastructure. The small assay office alone produced approximately $2,000, several years' wages for most workers. Despite wealth flowing through Vulture City, residents complained their town was extremely dull, though rich and lusty. Entertainment options were limited, but occasionally gold operations attracted legendary Western excitement. In 1881, strangers Monroe and Dennis met in Prescott and discovered mutual interest in regular gold shipments traveling by stagecoach from Vulture City. They decided to rob one of these lucrative transports. Their plan seemed solid: travel separately to avoid suspicion, meet near Vulture City, and waylay the gold-carrying stage. What Monroe didn't know was Dennis had already decided to betray their partnership, informing territorial authorities about the planned robbery. When the planned heist day arrived, Monroe noticed Prescott officials lurking around Vulture City and realized his partner had sold him out. Confronting Dennis with treachery accusations, Monroe demanded explanation. Dennis denied charges, then suddenly drew his pistol and shot Monroe through the arm. After a doctor treated Monroe's fractured arm, Deputy Sheriff Rogers placed the wounded would-be robber under guard outside Charlie Genung's meat market. But when Dennis casually strolled into view, the sight so enraged Monroe that despite his injured arm, he knocked Dennis down and began beating him with his knife butt while kicking repeatedly. It took both Genung and the sheriff to pull furious Monroe away. In perfect frontier ironic justice, Monroe was arrested for assault and rode as prisoner in the very stagecoach he'd planned to rob, while the gold shipment traveled safely to its destination. The most heartbreaking story belongs to the man who started it all. Henry Wickenburg, who discovered one of Arizona's richest gold deposits, should have been the territory's wealthiest man. His mine produced millions in gold and supported communities for decades. Instead, he died penniless and alone, and Wickenburg's tragedy lay in his partnership with Benjamin Phelps. Despite agreements and promises, the Philadelphia businessman systematically cheated Wickenburg from his rightful profits. Legal remedies were limited in territorial Arizona, and Phelps had resources to outlast any challenges. As years passed and the mine continued generating enormous wealth for everyone except its discoverer, Wickenburg fell into despair. In old age, completely destitute despite creating fortunes for others, the man who triggered Arizona's greatest gold rush made a final desperate decision. He ended his life with a Colt revolver, unable to live with the bitter irony. Today, much of Vulture City still stands in Arizona desert, testament to boom and bust cycles defining the American frontier. The town buildings and mill facilities survived the onslaught of time, providing visitors tangible connection to an era when thunderous stamp mill pounding represented progress and fortune's promise. The Vulture mine produced millions in gold over its operational lifetime, making it one of Arizona's most significant mining operations. But beyond raw numbers, Vulture City represents something larger. The collision between individual dreams and corporate power, between technological innovation and human ambition, between frontier promise and business harsh realities. Picture this: a stagecoach hurtling down a near-vertical mountainside, crashing violently at the bottom in a shower of splintered wood and dust. The driver crawls from the wreckage, grins at his terrified passengers, and declares it a beautiful descent, far less difficult than anticipated. This wasn't just any ordinary journey. This was the desperate race to reach what promised to be the greatest gold discovery in Southern California history. In the summer of 1854, California was suffering. The glory days of the gold rush were fading, placer mines were playing out, and economic depression was settling over the Golden State. Southern California, which had prospered supplying beef to northern mining camps, was sliding back into sleepy poco tiempo days. The region desperately needed something to reignite its fortunes. Then came the cry that changed everything: gold on the Kern River. Experienced Argonauts had struck it rich near the junction of the Kern River and its South Fork. By August, 130 miners were working the gravels, pulling out $10 to $25 per person daily. But the discovery that set hearts racing was a massive 21-pound gold nugget, glittering proof that the Kern River country held unimaginable treasures. The news spread like wildfire. A Mexican prospector from Kern River strutted through Mariposa's streets, flourishing a pouch bulging with gold nuggets, boasting about hills yellow with outcroppings. When word reached Los Angeles in December, a correspondent confirmed, "There is no doubt of there being a plenty of gold here." Southern California's newspapers seized on the discovery like desperate men grabbing a lifeline. Here was proof of the mineral wealth they'd claimed for years. The papers painted visions of a second gold rush, with Los Angeles becoming the San Francisco of the South. But there was one massive problem. No wagon road connected Los Angeles to the Kern River goldfields through treacherous mountain terrain. Enter Phineas Banning, Los Angeles's most dynamic stage entrepreneur, a man who never met a challenge he wouldn't tackle head-on. Banning decided to prove the route feasible by driving a stagecoach straight through to the goldfields. The first obstacle was formidable Fremont Pass beyond San Fernando Valley. As his horses strained up the steep grade, passengers walked while the animals fought for elevation. The real terror came on the descent, a brush-covered gulch plunging at near-perpendicular angle. Banning's companions begged him to reconsider, But the stage man declared any driver who couldn't handle this hill should confine himself to ox teaming in the valley. Banning whipped his horses forward and sent the rig plunging over the edge. The coach careened downward, completely out of control, bouncing off rocks until it smashed to pieces at the bottom. Passengers scrambled down in panic, certain they'd find Banning's broken body. Instead, they found him climbing from the debris with a broad smile. "Didn't I tell you? A beautiful descent, far less difficult than I had anticipated." This spirit drove Los Angeles's assault on the gold fields. Merchants raised money to improve the mountain road. By February 1855, Banning was running 6-horse stages and 10-mule freight wagons, accompanied by express lines and endless streams of gold seekers. Southern California caught gold fever with vengeance. Through dusty streets came miners and storekeepers, wagon trains and pack animals, cattle herds and sheep bands. Picks, pork, shovels, hard bread, and pans are at a premium, reported Santa Barbara. The Los Angeles Star noted, "Our public houses are crowded with strangers, although every kind of conveyance is called into requisition to get to the diggings." By early March, excitement reached fever pitch. The Los Angeles Southern Californian editor lost composure entirely. "Stop the press! Glorious news from Kern River. There are 1,000 gulches rich with gold and room for 10,000 miners." Northern California watched this southern enthusiasm skeptically until steamships brought concrete proof. On February 12th, the steamship Jicarilla docked with news that miners were pulling $50 daily from Kern River gravels. Over 2,000 men were already working claims. That was enough. The next day, Jicarilla pulled out jammed with fortune hunters. By early March, river steamers, some decorated with huge Kern River signs, puffed from Sacramento, loaded to capacity. The convergence point was Stockton, which exploded with activity as thousands poured in. It was 1849 all over again. Ho! For Kern River, and Kern River or bust. From Stockton, crowds took the wagon road entering the Sierra via White River, ending at Posey Flat. From there, 30 brutal miles over Greenhorn Mountain on foot or horseback led to the Promised Land. The main settlement, Forks of the Kern, followed classic gold rush patterns. Miners slept in tents, worked dawn to dusk hauling ore to the river for washing, and paid outrageous prices for supplies. Living far from authority, they governed by conscience alone, sometimes meaning frontier justice. One storekeeper was shot because he refused to sell a man a pair of pants on credit. When foreign miners arrived, hostile Americans refused them claims on the best ground. But by spring, harsh reality was setting in. Gold was definitely present, but not enough to justify the enormous expense and hardship of getting there. Most miners barely broke even. Disillusionment spread like plague. Frustrated miners denounced the excitement as a Los Angeles promotion scheme. By May, the great exodus began. Of 5,000 miners who had crowded in at peak excitement, only a few hundred remained. One eyewitness captured the desolate scene. Provisions, tools, bad whiskey, and vicious rattlesnakes in all directions. Los Angeles papers tried desperately to stem the tide. $2 or even $1 per day is far better employment than to come back here and loaf around our grog shops, argued the Star. But it was useless. The Kern River humbug became a northern goldfields laughingstock. In Sacramento, someone tied a mocking sign to a stray horse, bound for Kern River. Yet the story didn't end there. Captain Richard Keyes had discovered a rich quartz ledge in 1854, the source of much placer gold that sparked the original excitement. Around his mine grew Keysville, the first permanent American settlement in future Kern County. Through the late 1850s and 1860s, serious mining continued in remote mountain camps. New discoveries led to new settlements. Quartzburg, which boomed until temperance made it dry, forcing saloon keepers to establish their own town downstream, Whiskey Flat. In 1864, Confederate sympathizer Asbury Harpending arrived seeking Civil War refuge. His discovery in the Tehachapi Mountains led to founding Havilah, named after the biblical land where there is gold. This pine-shaded camp became county seat when Kern County was organized in 1866. The mining industry reached its peak in 1875 when Nevada's Silver Senator John P. Jones bought up the Big Blue Mine and surrounding properties, constructing a massive 80-stamp quartz mill that kept the camps humming with activity for several profitable years. But all golden dreams must end. In 1883, fire swept through the Big Blue installations, destroying the machinery and infrastructure that had sustained the last great mining operation in the Kern River country. The age of gold was over, leaving behind only ghost towns and memories of the brief, spectacular moment when Southern California thought it had found its ticket to mining immortality. Today, little remains of this forgotten chapter in California's golden saga. Most of the old mining camps lie beneath the waters of Isabella Reservoir, drowned by the march of progress. But for those willing to travel the bumpy dirt roads to Keysville and Havilah, the spirit of the great Kern River Gold Rush still whispers through the mountain wind, carrying tales of courage, greed, hope, and the eternal human dream of striking it rich. It's 1962, and an old man named Adolf Lobner is alone in his log cabin, 27 miles northeast of Carrizozo, New Mexico. The cabin is silent except for crackling flames that will soon claim both the building and his life. This isn't just any cabin. It's the last remnant of what was once a bustling saloon that served hundreds of gold-crazed prospectors. Today, only one family lives year-round where 300 desperate families once clawed gold from the earth to survive the Great Depression. Welcome to Hikaria, where Mexican miners with wooden bowls struck it rich in the 1850s, where American prospectors built a thriving community, and where the Great Depression brought not despair, but the town's greatest golden renaissance. This is the story of how gold created a community, sustained it through America's darkest economic hour, and ultimately abandoned it to become one of New Mexico's most haunting ghost towns. Our story begins in 1850, long before Hikaria had a name. In the remote hills of what would become Lincoln County, Mexican miners were quietly making one of the most significant gold discoveries in New Mexico's history. These weren't stereotypical American prospectors with pickaxes and dreams. These were native Mexican miners who understood the land, who knew how to read streams and hillsides for signs of gold. Their tool of choice, a simple wooden bowl called a bati. Imagine the scene. Mexican miners crouched beside crystal-clear streams flowing down from the Hikaria Mountains, carefully swirling dirt and water in wooden bowls, watching as heavier gold particles settled to the bottom while lighter sediment washed away. This was placer mining at its most elemental man, water, gold, and generations of knowledge passed from father to son. The technique was elegant in its simplicity, but make no mistake, these miners were finding real gold. Enough gold to make the streams and hillsides legendary among those who knew where to look. For nearly 3 decades, this remained the Mexican miner's secret, a sustainable operation that took what the earth offered without destroying the landscape. But golden secrets don't stay secret forever. The 1880s brought a seismic shift to the Hikarias with American prospectors who had heard whispers of Mexican gold. These weren't men content with wooden bowls and stream beds. They came with industrial ambitions, looking not just for loose gold particles in water, but for the source itself, the mother lode embedded deep in mountain rock. While Mexican miners practiced placer mining, Surface mining for gold already weathered from rock and deposited in streams, Americans were after lode deposits, actual veins of gold still locked in solid rock. This shift from placer to lode mining changed everything. Suddenly, the Hikarias weren't just a place where families could quietly pan for gold. They became a destination for serious prospectors willing to invest significant time and money hoping to strike it rich. And they came in droves. By the time dust settled, approximately 200 people had descended upon this remote corner of New Mexico, transforming the quiet mining area into a genuine settlement. They called it Hikaria, after the mountains that yielded their fortune, building crude shacks and homes that created the infrastructure of permanent community. By 1905, Jicarilla had evolved into a fully functioning frontier town built entirely around gold. E.H. Talbert ran the general store, keeping miners supplied with everything from pickaxes to coffee. Joe Long operated the saloon, serving as social center, news hub, and meeting place where mining claims were discussed and deals struck. A.H. Norton served as justice of the peace, bringing law and order to a place that could easily have descended into chaos over competing gold claims. But perhaps the most telling sign of Hikaria's commitment to permanence came in 1907 with construction of their schoolhouse. This wasn't just any building. This was a statement that Hikaria was here to stay, a place where families could put down roots and children could build futures. The story of that schoolhouse is remarkable. Logs were cut and hewn in the canyon on Ancho Peak's east side, then dragged down the mountain to a site about a mile south of the main settlement. It was backbreaking work, but these miners understood that education was as valuable as gold. The rectangular log building served dual purposes that perfectly captured frontier mining community spirit. During the week, it educated miners' children, giving them skills that might take them beyond the mountains. But Saturday nights, it transformed into a dance hall where the community celebrated another week of survival in one of America's most unforgiving environments. Then came the Great Depression, and with it, one of the most unexpected chapters in Hikaria's story. While the rest of America collapsed economically, while banks failed and businesses closed, something extraordinary was happening in the remote Hikaria hills. People were flocking to Hikaria, as many as 300 destitute families who had heard that in this forgotten New Mexico corner, a person could still make a living pulling gold from earth. In the 1930s, when average Americans struggled to find work at any wage, families in Hikaria could make as much as $7 a week mining gold. $7 might not sound like much today, but during the Depression, it was the difference between survival and starvation. These weren't experienced miners. These were teachers, farmers, shop clerks, and factory workers who had lost everything in the economic collapse and were willing to try anything, even learning to pan for gold with techniques unchanged since the Mexican miners of the 1850s. The population explosion was unprecedented. The little one-room schoolhouse that had served a few dozen miners' children was suddenly packed with more than 60 students. Wild turkeys in surrounding hills became crucial food sources, supplementing diets of families literally living off the land and whatever gold they could coax from streams. This was Hikaria's golden age, not because mining was more profitable than ever, but because gold had become hope itself for hundreds of American families with nowhere else to turn. Hikaria's story can be told through its buildings, each one a chapter in the town's relationship with gold. No building captures this better than the log structure that began as a saloon in 1908. Picture this building in its early days, a rough-hewn log saloon where miners gathered after long prospecting days, their pockets hopefully heavier with gold dust than they'd been that morning. The saloon was community heartbeat, where claims were traded, partnerships formed, and discoveries celebrated or commiserated. But gold mining towns are adaptable, and by 1914, this saloon had transformed into something more essential, the post office and store. For 13 years, this single building served as Hikaria's connection to the outside world and main commercial center. After 1927, as the town declined, it became home to Adolf Loebner, one of the old-timers who had seen Hikaria through its various incarnations. Then came 1962, and the tragic fire that claimed both Loebner's life and the building that had served as saloon, post office, store, and home. In a way, that fire marked the end of Hikaria's connection to its golden past. But other buildings survived. The false front building that served as store and post office during the 1930s Depression boom still stands today, a monument to that extraordinary time when hundreds of families found salvation in streams that had been giving up gold for nearly a century. Most remarkably, the 1907 schoolhouse still stands, its windows now covered with rusty corrugated iron sheeting, protecting the interior where miners' children once learned and the community once gathered to dance away frontier hardships. As America recovered from the Great Depression, something ironic happened in Hikaria. The economic recovery that the rest of the country celebrated became Hikaria's death sentence. Jobs became available again in cities and towns. Factories reopened, businesses hired workers, and suddenly mining gold for $7 a week didn't seem attractive anymore. Families who had found refuge in Hikaria during America's darkest economic period began leaving, drawn back to more stable employment opportunities. This wasn't sudden exodus. It was gradual population bleeding as opportunities elsewhere became more attractive than uncertain gold mining prospects. One by one, crude shacks and homes were abandoned. School enrollment dropped. The store saw fewer customers. The dance hall fell silent. By the time the last families left, Jicarilla had completed a full cycle from Mexican mining camp to American boomtown to Depression-era refuge to ghost town. Today, if you drive those 27 miles northeast of Carrizozo to where Hikaria once thrived, you'd find a landscape almost impossible to reconcile with the bustling community we've described. Only one family lives year-round in what was once home to 300 families. The silence is profound. Gone are sounds of mining equipment, voices of children heading to school, music from Saturday night dances. But ghosts of Hikaria's golden past remain visible. The false front building from the 1930s still stands, weathered but intact, a monument to that extraordinary Depression renaissance. The log schoolhouse still stands too, its covered windows like closed eyes that once watched over miners' children's education and community celebrations. And somewhere in streams and hillsides around Hikaria, the gold is still there. The same gold that Mexican miners extracted with wooden bowls, that American prospectors sought with industrial ambitions, that provided hope to desperate Depression-era families, it's still there, waiting. If you would like to see a lost gold story by where I grew up, click on the link in the description. Join my Patreon community and discover my art print products on my website in the links provided in my description and link above. Also, if you would like a particular image from my videos, give the timestamp for image, and I will upload it to my website and Patreon. Thank you for joining your desert frontiersman Alan for another Southwest Gold story. Check out my large catalog of Southwest videos and playlists on historical tales, legends, lost gold stories, and adult bedtime stories. If you like a certain image from my videos, tell me in comments and give timestamp. Happy trails! Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more great content. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.